Thank you very much for the invitation and the introduction. My talk is about the newest archaeobotanical results from the Hittite site of Oymaağaç, or Nerik, the former coronation point of the early Hittite kings. It is structured. Oh, it's not working. Now it's working. It is structured into a small overview about the location and the excavation history of the site. Then a small overview about the location and the excavation history of the site, the project structure and the stratigraphy, the material and the methods of the archaeobotanical work, and its results of the seed analysis of charred and waterlogged plant remains. In the end, I will give you a small overview about the conclusions, of course. The site represents an important key place at the central Black Sea coast area and is located on the edge of the Hittite core area. So you can see it here on this red dot. On the map, the two Hittite cities, Bogaskö, the Hittite Hattusha, and Kushakle, the Hittite Sarissa, are marked. North of them, lying in the fertile valley of the river Kızılırmak, is Oymaağaç. The region is known as an important place since the late Bronze Age from historic customs of the Hittites, but only few sites are investigated yet in this area. Today, the area shows a temperate, nearly pontic climate with about 700 millimeters annual precipitation and a dry season of 1 or 2 months. The natural vegetation would probably be a mixed oak forest, but today the area is nearly treeless with planted black pines, except the mountainous areas. So here in the picture, Today, the fertile valley of the city Vesjököprü is heavily used for agriculture. 2005, Professor Dr. Jörg Klinger and Professor Dr. Reinhard Zichon initiated a project called Origin and Development of the Hittite Culture in the Middle Black Sea area. Known from surveys and flights in the region, the Oymaağaç was chosen for more investigation. A geophysical prospection in 2006 brought several structures to light. 2007, the excavation started and is still in progress today. It was funded by several German funding institutions like the Deutsche Forschungsgemeinschaft, and since 2018, it is also funded by the Turkish Ministry of Culture, and the excavation now is under Turkish leadership. Now, this is a plan of the site. The settlement of Oymaağaç, measuring around 2 hectares, starts in the Chalcolithic period with a horizon of houses and kilns, excavated on top of the mound. For the early Bronze Age, no settlement activity was detected, and only few ceramics from the Middle Bronze Age or Karun period ensure a settlement activity. The first architectural remains in form of quarry stone walls are from the Late Bronze Age. A gate, several monumental buildings, and even smaller ones, and an underground channel with a chamber. With the beginning of the 12th century BC, at the end of the Hittite Empire, the younger temple was destroyed, but the settlement seems to have continued to be used because the access to the underground chamber was rebuilt. In the Roman and Byzantine period, the place was used as a graveyard. The underground tunnel provided a great surprise for the excavators and a unique preservation conditions for plant remains. It leads 30 meters down into the soil and has no exit to the outside of the city, as it is often built inside Hittite city walls. At the end of the tunnel, the stairs ended and a small chamber with a well was visible. The whole chamber was filled with fine sediments and water. The sediments contained ceramics, thousands of wooden tools and building structures, and of course, waterlogged plant remains as seeds and fruits. The wooden pieces are mostly wood of pine and oak, and are in a very good condition. They look like recently deposited, and also the cut marks and surfaces are preserved. It took several years to empty the tunnel and the chamber and to document the stratigraphy of this unique context. The whole sediments were flotated and the different layers could be dated to the Iron Age and the Late Bronze Age, as here on the picture. As the underground water was a big problem for the excavators, but a piece of luck for the botanists. Every day, several hours of pumping are necessary to empty the chamber, and after a short while, it is filled again. So you can see here on the picture. So this was the site. Agriculture was the basis for the development and prosperity of the Hittite people. The archaeobotanical sampling of the entire settlement period offers an insight into local agriculture and from the Chalcolithic period to the early Iron Age. The aim is to compare diachronically the different periods within the reference site and, on a regional basis, with a few archaeobotanically examined Hittite sites. Thus, Oymaağaç provides an important contribution to the development of early agriculture production and the changes of the natural environment. So to these materials and methods. Some samples were analyzed by Dr. Simone Riel as a preliminary report and by Dr. Stefan Hahn for his master thesis. Also, Dr. Alexander Weide, Dr. Nathan White, and Dr. Burhan Ullaş worked on site on the samples. The main part was identified by myself. The reports from all scientists are published on the website of NERIC, so it's www.neric.de. There is also some articles about all contexts and finds from all excavation years. A systematic archaeobotanical sampling of the excavated area was conducted between 2007 and 2019. The 670 samples were processed on-site using a flotation machine with a sieve mesh size of 0.2 millimeters. If possible, the samples had an average volume of 30 liters, around 3 buckets. The samples from the underground chamber were much bigger because the whole content was flotated. The flotation extracts were examined for charred and uncharred plant residues. So at the end, 10 samples were from the underground chamber and contained waterlogged seeds and wood. The samples are nearly all dated by stratigraphical context. So we have 22 Chalcolithic, 286 late Bronze Age, 3 of them waterlogged, and 329 Iron Age samples, 7 of them waterlogged, Byzantine Roman samples, and some of them were also excluded. At the end, a total of 228 taxa and about more than 115,000 botanical remains could be determined. Now to the results. In the samples from the Chalcolithic period, einkorn and emmer and different pulses like lens and bitter wedge could be determined, together with pistachio, olive, and flax. The spectrum is dominated by cereals with more than 80%. So on this slide, you see here the cereals. They are mixed cereals, which we cannot identify. And barley, naked wheat, emmer is the lilac one. Then emmer einkorn mix, which we cannot identify exactly. Einkorn and wheat. So you can see this is really more than 80% are cereals, and only a small part are legumes and fruits or nuts. In the late Bronze Age, einkorn and emmer were widely replaced by barley and naked wheat. So here you see from Chalcolithic to the late Bronze Age, the differences that you have the barley here and the naked wheat in green, that it's replaced so much more the einkorn and emmer cereals. Furthermore, pea, hazelnut, and grapevine were determined, and more than 90% of the spectrum are cereals, so it's even more cereals than in the Chalcolithic period. The same counts for the samples from the Iron Age. The spectrum is strongly influenced by barley and naked wheat, but also broomcorn millet, different pulses, hazelnut, fig, olive, pistachio, and different fruits like plum, berries, or grapevine could be detected. But now there are also 10 samples from the underground chamber, dating to the late Bronze Age and the Iron Age. They derive from waterlogged sediments and show a very different picture. So the charred cereals were only less than the half of the spectrum. And this is really very important. Also, the naked wheat was more visible than the barley. The fruits and the grape were common. Also, grapes also fruit, but fruit and grapes were very common. So especially, for example, raspberry, plum, or grape. But we also have many more other taxa of possibly useful plants, like henbane, St. John's wort, or poppy, elderberry, and so on. Also nightshade. So in this picture, you see the nightshade and the henbane seeds. The late Bronze Age samples show even less cereals and more fruits like grape, berry, and olive. So here in the comparison, it's the same bar as the last one in the Iron Age, and this is from the late Bronze Age. So in the late Bronze Age samples, which were the newest samples I identified, were even less cereals and more fruits. And here on the picture, you see the hazelnut and some berry fruit seeds and the grape seeds and the cherry seed, or cherry stone. The charred taxa deliver only a quarter of the spectrum. So 2/3 are from wild plants with a broad spectrum. So you here see on this slide, You see the charred taxa only a very small part. And these are the uncharred seeds and fruits from the chamber. So for example, we have 2/3 of them are the wild plants with a very broad spectrum. So these are typical wild plant taxa. And as you see here on this slide, you have the wild plants here and the useful plants. So like cereals, legends, some fruits or other useful taxa. And this is a very broad spectrum of wild plants. Also typical field weeds are visible like Macroremains, bromus, or some species of this kind. So typical field weeds were very common. Furthermore, also indicators of moist soils like sedges and clubrush were visible. One of the problems of this chamber is that the dating of these marked plant taxa is necessary because they were also uncharred present in the samples from the whole site and excluded from the former investigations so far, because we didn't know whether they are really old or whether they were recent intrusions. But now in this waterlogged sediments, you cannot distinguish between old or new seeds. But because of the chamber, the chamber was a closed context, we should consider them again, that they are really part of the sediments and of the fossil seeds. So to conclude this, the cultivation spectrum shows from Oymaağaç shows that einkorn and emmer were very important in the prehistoric diet, but were replaced by barley and naked wheat in the late Bronze Age. The Iron Age species spectrum is also strongly dominated by barley, and the importance of naked wheat and pulses increased. The waterlogged samples from the Iron Age underground chamber show a very high number of taxa and plant remains, and also from the late Bronze Age samples, especially fruits and wild plants. If we compare these results to other Hittite sites, we can use the capital city Boğazköy, Hattusha, and Kuşaklı, Hittite Sarissa, which are located in the Hittite core area of the central Anatolian highlands. They provide a more continental climate with less rainfall and dry and cold winters than Oymaağaç, which means less favorable conditions for agriculture. But the samples from the late Bronze Age lower city of Boğazköy and Kuşaklı show a broadly similar plant spectrum. The plant remains represent crop processing next to the residues of food preparation and garbage disposal within fire in the hearths of waterlogged sediments in the underground chamber. The comparison of the waterlogged samples with the samples from the surface showed that they bear a great potential for seed and wood analysis. A very high number of taxa of charred and uncharred seeds and wood is given. There is also no pre-selection on preservation conditions by charring, as it is the case for the dry samples from the surface. But the contextual terms limit the possibility for a direct comparison of the samples. How did the seeds arrive inside the chamber and why? Only an evaluation of the sample spectrum together with contextual comparison provide insight into local conditions, specializations, and preferred nutritional resources of the inhabitants of Oymaağaç. So thank you for the attention, and if you want to know more, you can write me email or you can look on this on our homepage. Here is it written again, and thank you very much.